Hello. Let's see. Looks like we don't quite have a quorum yet. Give it a few more minutes for people to arrive.
I have a question while we're waiting. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
absolutely.
Okay, so when you started doing the coding yesterday, and I I missed Monday, but
Mm,
some of the conventions or some of the workflow that you were talking about was not familiar to me. You had something where you had like the small letter O inside of parentheses.
Mm.
Was that something that you discussed on Monday?
No, that was more covered in the module on asynchronous programming.
Oh,
From
okay then.
from the first module that I taught.
Oh, okay then.
But I did forget to upload my slides for Monday, so let me actually just do that right now.
Okay, that would be perfect because I was looking for them.
Yeah, I forgot to upload them.
Okay.
I'm gonna send them out right now. I'll post
All
them.
right. And
I'll
I think
post.
that'll help me to that'll bring me up to speed with everything that's going on. I hope.
Yeah, I'm gonna put them in I'm gonna put them in Slack, and then later on tonight I'll put them in the Google Classroom.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna put them in CIC student
Okay.
resources. It's a good. Thanks for the reminder. Forgot to do that.
Okay. And now the slides that you're putting up, will they also cover what you're talking about today? Or will that be a
Uh,
different set of slides?
yeah, that'll be a different set of slides. I can post
Okay.
those as well.
All right.
Yeah, the slides that I'm going to use today are actually I didn't develop them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see. They're from it's on unit testing,
Okay.
um, and they're actually from one of the courses that I took um, when I was in university. The My professor who was teaching the course gave me permission to use his slides. So
Oh, okay. Oh, that was nice.
yeah, it's nice of him.
All
But,
right. Well, I'll skip on over to Slack and grab the slides now.
okay,
Thank you.
yeah. While we're waiting, does anybody have any questions about this week's content so far?
In general, like I'm just thinking about my capstone.
Mm-hmm.
Am I testing when I'm connecting to an API or my server or like something that's external from my like HTML, CSS code? Is that generally how it works?
Well, that's integration testing. Is like when you're connecting to some other service that's external to your code, that's external to the code that you're testing. Then that's what integration testing is, because you're testing the integration between your component, the component that you're writing, and that external code. And there are basically two ways to do that testing. The first one is to test it end to end. So what that means is that when you run the test, the code that you're testing, like your component, the one that lives inside of your application, is going to make a call to that third party, to that external service, like to the real service, and get the result back, and then continue running the test. And the advantage to that is that you can actually make sure that that service is working, and that the result that it gives back is the one that your application expects. So that's useful. That's a useful test to run, because if your application relies on that service, you want to make sure that service is alive, right, and working the way that you expect. Because if the service is down, or maybe the API has changed unexpectedly, so that it's giving you back some value that you don't expect, that can break your application. So, so that kind of a test is a useful one to run, but it's also, but the disadvantage to that kind of test is that it, you know, your test might break unexpectedly and it would have nothing to do with your code, right? So if you just want to make sure that your code is working, and you know, so that when you run the tests, they, you know, you're just testing, you know, the code that's
Right. That's where you would
inside
use,
of your project.
right.
Sorry?
That's where you would use the mock data.
Exactly. That's where you'd use a, that's where you would set up a mock and you would use mock data. Yeah, exactly. So, so it's useful to have both. Like ideally you'll have both, but, and, but you might use them in different contexts or in different ways. Like you'll probably have them running separately. But like there are projects where like most of like the really important thing is this, you know, third-party integration, this integration with external services, and um, and so and so they'll only run end-to-end tests, like in their continuous integration service. I can give you one example of a project like that, which is shields.io. And what shields.io does is it basically is a web service. It gives you like um, little badges. So I'm posting this in student resources. Um, so it gives you little badges that connect to external services, and they show you some. Here, I'm going to share my screen. So all that shields.io is designed to do is to connect to external services and give you a little status badge, which displays some data that it gets back from that service. So for example, you know, it can connect to like some cloud stuff. Like if you want to make sure that if you started a server, you want to make sure that your server is up and in a good state. Shields.io will connect to like AWS or Azure, and you know, and just check that status of that server, and then get the response back and render it inside of a badge. And they make it really easy to just, you know, drop that badge into like a README, so that people can just quickly go to a page and say, okay, everything's looking good, or this thing has failed. Now, the way that shields.io does testing is like they want to make it so that anybody can contribute one of these badges to their project, and so they make it so that if you contribute some code to their project to add a new badge which connects to a new service, they make it so that you need to write a test to test that badge. And the way that they've chosen to instruct people to write those tests is as an integration test. They only accept integration tests, where it basically tests your application end to end. So it'll test that the badge renders correctly. You know, that's like the snapshot testing. Test to make sure that it renders. But the code that is, like the test code doesn't attempt to mock out the call to the backend API. It will always call out to that API. so that it's calling live APIs in order to run that test. And because they decided that like that was the most important thing for their project. Like it was more valuable for their project to know when a third-party service was failing or was down or was experiencing instability, and to bring that instability into their project so that when it's run in continuous integration, it might randomly, spontaneously fail because the service is down. They decided to bring that instability into their project so that they could actually be made more aware of when these services are unstable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, these are basically engineering trade-offs, you know, how you do testing and what you test and when you test. And it can really be decided on a case-by-case or a project-by-project basis. So yesterday we talked mostly about snapshot tests, and today we're going to talk also about unit tests, still in the context of React. I think we're going to do it like today's class is going to be set up like yesterday's, in the sense that we're going to start with the lab content, and we're going to build some more stuff in React, and then we're going to do a little bit of lecture content, and then at the end of class we'll finish up by writing some tests for the project that we built. So we're basically going to enhance the project that we started yesterday to make it more interactive and add some interactivity to it. And then our tests will be able to test that interactivity. So we'll simulate the user behavior, like user interaction with. We'll simulate the users clicking and typing, and we'll be able to use again, we'll be able to use Jest for that, but we can also use Selenium for that, because they have certain advantages and disadvantages, and we'll go through that. So let me see if we have. So we're about 15 minutes in. I'm just gonna. I think. Let's see. Is everybody 1, 2, 3, 4? It looks like I think everybody's here. Anyway, I think we gotta get started. So so let's go back to the just a moment. Yeah, so we're going to go back to our REPL.it workspace. Let me see if I can just click on the link. That I posted yesterday. See if that still works. Okay, it looks like it saved the code, but I have to start a new session. So I'm going to post that now. Is everybody in the room? Looks like we have 5 people in the room, 6, 7. So if you recall, if you remember yesterday, we built a little weather widget. We can run it right now and just make sure that it's working. Oh, and surprisingly, it looks like it might be broken. Oh, no, not broken, just slow. Okay. So what we built, it checks to, it looks up the user's current location, and then it fetches some data from the NOAA API, the forecast, and then it renders the forecast. So that's a pretty good default assumption that the user is going to want to see the weather for their current location, but it's not always going to be true, and sometimes the user might want to see weather for a different location. So we're going to extend this so that the user can type in their location. And for now, to make things easier, we're just going to have them type in their latitude and longitude coordinates. Of course, most people aren't going to know the latitude and longitude coordinates of, they'll want to specify like the name of their, a town or a neighborhood or a city, in, basically some locality. And then it would be up to us to take that text that they enter and convert it to essentially to latitude and longitude coordinates. That's a process called geocoding, and that is something that we can maybe also do today. Although I'm not aware of any free geocoding APIs, we could certainly use Google Maps to do that, if that's something that's useful and that people would like to see. But initially, I think we just want to test that basic user interaction. So we'll create a couple of form fields, and we will have the user a couple of form fields where we can type in the latitude and longitude, and then we'll read that data, and we'll use that to update the state of our React component and refetch the data and then regenerate the forecast. And then later on, we'll be able to test that interaction to make sure that it's behaving as we would expect. So if we just want to add a couple of form fields, so first of all, Alice, have you guys covered HTML forms, or did you do any form handling last week.
Yes, a little bit. We had a couple, like 1 or 2 field forms we went through.
Okay, super. So so this will probably be like a refresher or a recap. So would anybody like to, if we wanted to add a form to line 26 inside of the app component, would anybody like to take control and type out a form? It'll be, we want a form with 2 fields, one for latitude and one for longitude. Oh, I think we might have deleted what was in app. How do we undo?
It's weird because it doesn't look like that on mine.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. It's maybe just on my end. I'll refresh. Oh, wow. And it said I need to start a new session. Maybe not. Let me just a sec. Just a sec. Minor technical difficulties.
It disappeared on my screen too, but it's back now.
Oh, okay. I'm refreshing the page. We'll see if it comes back. Oh no, looks like it disappeared for me.
Hmm.
Oh, that's odd. Um, hmm. Um, yeah, it says that it's saved. Oh, now it's back. On your end was well, okay, that's fine. I was gonna want to know if what the file sync status said, but anyway, let's continue. Let's continue on. So oh, it looks like now we've got 2. Looks like now it was pasted twice. So I'm just gonna remove the guy from the top here. Oops. Okay, and it says that it's saved. Although with the syntax error on line 1, is that? Oh yeah, that's because of this. Okay, good. Oh, because it needs a comma. Um, oh, that's also, looks like it got a little messed up. Import component from React. React component from React. Okay, all right, now we're back. All right, so sorry about that. Let's try that again. So yeah, line 26. Let's try to create a form. Form with 2 inputs. Yeah, and then a couple of input elements. That looks good. And then we probably want to like put those on separate rows and then add some labels in front of them. One that says like latitude, one that says longitude. So, so row is not itself a legal HTML tag, but you could use div or p for a paragraph if you wanted to.
Oh, sorry. We had been using a React strap last week.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. And then we probably want to add some labels. Yeah, great. Yep, just want to change that second one to double quotes and longitude. Yeah, totally. Good. The highlighting is off. I don't know why. I'm looking to see if there's an error or something, but it looks, oh, it just didn't like the spaces between spaces in the attribute. Okay, so that's looking good. All right. Okay, good. So we have a simple form. So what we want to do next, so we want one more thing. So there are a couple of things we'd probably like to do. Okay, so first, when we have the user's latitude and longitude, we probably want to populate this form with latitude and longitude values, so that the user can, because it's good for the form to have like a sensible default value, and so that's probably the first thing we want to do. The second thing we probably want to do is we need to add a submit button to this form so that the user can, submit the form, and we can act on that. So let's start with the submit button. Do you want to add an input type equals submit at the bottom of this form? Great. So now what we want to do is let's add a simple handler for the submit behavior of this form. So, so the way that you're going to do that is you're going to add a handler called onSubmit, but it's actually going to go on the form element rather than on the input element, because it's like we're submitting the form. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Great. And you can have this thing, for now, maybe just have it call console.log. Yeah, I mean, we could, let's see what that does. So I'm going to open a new tab so I can see the console. Oh, okay. So React is complaining because of the for attribute. It wants for to be called HTML4. The reason why is because JSX is mixed in with JavaScript, and for is a keyword in JavaScript. It just doesn't like for, so it wants HTML4. I just updated that. Okay, that's looking good. Now if we do foo bar, say submit. Okay, well it definitely did console.log, but it also submitted. It also caused the page to refresh, and that's because the form, the default behavior of the form, is to is basically to well, it's not exactly to cause the page to refresh. So let me take a step back and talk about HTML forms. So back in the olden days of the web, when in order to back before Ajax, back before you were able to use JavaScript to fetch new content into the page, and like basically Ajax, the idea behind Ajax was that you were able to like talk to web servers without refreshing the page. Previously, what you'd have to do in order to see new content in a web page was you'd have to click a link and then navigate to a new page. Basically, the only way that you were able to get new content into the browser or submit content to the web server was by refreshing the page. And so that's what's actually happening with this form. Is what it's doing is it's refreshing it. Once we're submitting the form, it's actually refreshing the page. It's making a HTTP GET request to the server, and it's trying to submit the page with some parameters in the URL. So in fact, if I were to change this from ID, the attribute from ID, to name, I believe if we change these values and then click submit, then you can actually see these values are in the URL as what are called query parameters. So so the form added some parameters to the URL, and the idea was that the server would be able to see these parameters added to the URL, and then act on them in order to look up some data, and then return to us a new page. So basically, forms and links, which is to say anchor tags, were the way of navigating around the web. So that behavior is still in there. But now that we're using, now that we have Ajax and the XML HTTP request object, we're actually able to talk to web servers without refreshing the page. So we don't need this behavior, this old built-in default behavior of the form anymore. At the same time, we still want to use the forms. Like there are some things that the form does for us that we actually want to keep. Like for example, if I press enter while I'm focused inside of this input field, then that will submit the form. And that's actually something that we still want. So if I press enter, it submits the form. So we still want that kind of behavior. Like, that's still useful to us, because that's one way that users are used to interacting with web forms, is you press enter when you're inside of a form field and it submits the form. So this is all kind of like a long way to explain what I'm about to do, which is this. So we're going to create a handler for the form. We're going to call it form handler. Exciting name. Which takes the event, the submit event, as input, and we're going to call it here, this.form handler. And then here's the, so all of that stuff that I just described, it's a long explanation for this thing right here. Say e.prevent default. Also e.stop propagation. And then we'll do a console.log of the event. So what does this magic line, what does line 25 do? Well, basically, for the form event, it should prevent the page from refreshing. We can test that now. Bar, I'm going to press enter. So what I'm going to expect is that I'm going to see the event in the log in the console, but the page is going to stay the same. Okay, so that's what happened. So yeah, e.prevent default basically stopped the form from causing the page to refresh, which it would do if we hadn't called e.prevent default. So all of that was a long explanation for why we have e.prevent default on line 25. So then we need to get the we need to read the form values. So we need to read the values out of the inputs, and then force the state to refresh, and then act on that updated state. So there are a lot of libraries in React which will do this for you, so that when you're changing the inputs in the form, actually I think there's some stuff that's built in which is probably a little bit nicer for binding the input to the state at this point, right? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Alice, do you remember what that stuff, how to bind the input? Like what's the best way to bind the input to the state in React at this point?
Like just on change handlers.
Yeah, you can do on change handlers, but isn't there like another way to do like to bind an input? I thought there was another way to hook that up. I thought there was like another more recent way to do it. I mean, we can do it with on change handlers as well, but I think there was, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway.
They have like refs now, so you can like access the DOM nodes, so you can get the value that way, but that's not like really what it's built for.
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking of that. Anyway, we'll use on change handlers for now. I mean, I think it's like, I don't think it's incorrect to do it that way. Actually, let me just do one quick Google search. Yeah, React input bound. Just make sure that um, that I'm not, yeah, oh, no, wouldn't be value. Controlled components, right. They've got a new thing. Actually, it's, yeah, okay, so form on submit. Ah, oh, well, actually, this looks exactly like what you would expect. Yeah, on change, handle change, values, this dot state dot value. That looks okay. Well, anyway, so okay, so we've confirmed that that's the best way to do it.
I was really hoping you were going to show me some magical way I never heard of before, just blow my mind, but this is it too.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, this is definitely the way to do it. All right, so we'll just do that. So right, so we need to basically um, add some event handlers to these input elements, so that we're updating the state whenever the input elements change. Um, so and in fact, there is an example of how to do this here, which I'm going to post to the Slack now for future reference. So would anybody like to try to implement this in our application? Here, I'll do the first one, and then someone can come in. I'll do it for latitude, and someone can come in and do it for longitude. So we'll do yep, we'll do on change equals this dot handle latitude change. Create a new method called handle latitude change. And then we're going to do e dot, let's see, how do these guys do it? Yeah, just e dot target dot value, just like what you'd expect. And we'll set the value of latitude to event.target.value. That seems pretty good. And then we can reference that here, value equals this dot state dot latitude, just like that. So let's verify that this worked. Oh, doesn't like. Good. Line 31. Change that to E. All right, good. And in our submit handler, we'll just verify console.log this dot state dot latitude to make sure that it has picked up the change. Okay, latitude 123. Oh, it didn't like that. Can it read property set state of undefined? Is that because it doesn't have a this object? I think it probably does. Yeah. So we can't really reference methods without first binding them. Otherwise, we will lose the this object. We can't just do this dot handle latitude change and use that as a handler, because otherwise we lose access to the this object. So I think the common approach to handling this is in the constructor, you do this. This dot handle latitude change is equal to this dot handle latitude change dot bind this. So this is just a common pattern for solving that problem. Okay, I believe we can try this now. 1, 2, 3. Oh, still didn't like that. Bind must be called on a function.
Can you use the arrow function because it'll inherit the bind?
I mean,
Yeah, I think you can also do it like this, but that might have um, a, some weird syntax implications. Oh, and also the problem is that oh no, that's what I was. Oops, shoot, sorry. Yeah, I think this will work. Like, do we have this? Yeah, we have this. That set state. Yeah, so that. Oh, sorry, just a sec. Okay, it looks like it likes that now. Let's verify. 1, 2, 3. Says a component is changing an uncontrolled input of type undefined to be controlled. Input elements should not switch from uncontrolled to controlled or vice versa. Decide between a controlled or uncontrolled input element for the lifetime of the component. Um, yeah, on line 44. Um, I think the reason why is because initially the initial value of this dot state dot latitude is undefined, which is making it think that the value is not set, which is why it thinks it's switching from a controlled value to uncontrolled. So I'm just going to set latitude to, I mean, I think I could do null, but I'm going to do 0 for right now. And then I think that will eliminate that particular error message. Let's verify. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's not complaining anymore. If we do sit, submit, yeah. So it's complaining that state is undefined, and that's because of the same issue that we had with handle latitude change. So we'll set form handler. This dot form handler is equal to this dot form handler dot bind this. Okay, now this should work. 1, 2, 3, submit. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so okay, so we're doing good. So we did latitude. So would somebody like to do the same thing for longitude so that we can handle longitude? Cool. Then you gotta create a new method, right? Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's great. And then the last thing is to add a line like line 10 in the constructor, and then on line 14 or 15 to add longitude to the state. So there's a syntax error on line 10. So I think we need a, yep. And then there's a syntax error on line 16. Great. So let's verify that that works. Foo bar. Oops. Cannot read property set state of undefined for handle longitude change. Why is that? Ah, it's because there's a typo on line 10. Foo bar. Submit. Oh, yeah, we just have to modify console.log in the form handler. Okay, good. Submit. Foobar. Okay, perfect. So that's working well. So now what we have to do is we have to, yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to modify the application as follows. So we're going to make it so that the default, when the user first loads the page, it's going to use their latitude and longitude. And we are going to set the, update the input elements to show the user's current latitude and longitude. And then when the user changes the latitude and longitude and clicks submit, that's when we'll use the latitude and longitude that they've specified in order to look up a new forecast. So we are going to have to modify the fetch weather function that we created, because currently it, well, let me open that up. We can take a look at it. Currently, the fetch weather function will look up the user's current position by default. So we probably, well, can anybody suggest how to change this function so that we can, so that it can be more flexible? Because like we want to fetch the weather, but we don't want to look up the user's location every time. So what would be the best way to modify this function and the app.js function, or the app component, to implement the behavior that I've just described? Yeah.
Would you use like the this dot state dot longitude and then latitude in the fetch?
That's a good question.
So that like when it updates, then it would, that's what it would.
Right. So
Using the right one, but like.
no, that's a totally valid. That's a good idea. So yeah, one approach would be to take this. Okay, so so currently in fetch weather, we don't have access to the state, to this dot state dot whatever. Of course, we can modify it to accept the latitude and longitude as parameters, but we can't reference this dot state directly in this function because it's not in the same class as the app component. Now we could create a method inside of the app component called fetch weather, like this. Which would then be able to reference, you could do something like this. This dot state dot latitude and this dot state dot longitude.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, but I forgot that this has to be in the same place. So.
Yeah, so so you could definitely do this, but can anybody think of why? And this is kind of nice because now everything is sort of in one spot, and and you don't have to pass the latitude and longitude around as parameters. So it's a little bit simpler in that way. But can you think of why this might not be good to do? Anything having to do with the current module that we're on?
Because if the API breaks, then everything does.
Right, and also it just might be more difficult to test because we, when testing fetch weather, it's a little bit easier to mock. Like we basically want to mock fetch weather because the first thing that it does is call some external API. And it's easier to mock functions that are broken out into a separate module. So, so that's one reason why we probably want to keep code that calls out to external services in their own module and not put it inside of our components, directly inside of our components. It's so that it makes it easier for us to mock those components. Okay. So, but that's good thinking. But yeah, because we're on the testing module, we'll move forward with fetch weather being broken out. So with that said, though, there are like two things that we would want to do to the fetch weather function in order to make it like we want to make it so that it doesn't look up the user's current location every time, and instead it receives the latitude and longitude as parameters. So and at the same time we want to look up the user's current location once when the application loads, and then we pretty much don't want to do it again after that. So can anybody modify the fetch weather function and the app component in order to make those changes? Right now we're doing what's called refactoring. We're refactoring our code to accept new requirements. So how would we modify fetch weather so that it doesn't fetch the user's current position every time?
Well, like we would just take that part out, right?
Yeah, totally. So if
you take out the whole that promise resolve, like 2 through 3, I guess, of the line, right? 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's right. So do you want to make that change?
Yeah. So this.
And also save that chunk of code because we're going to use it later. Oh, it deleted everything on my end again.
Oh.
Did it delete everything on anybody else's end?
Yeah,
No.
I did everything on mine.
Why did it do that? It's still here. I just pasted the part that I took out like at the bottom and then commented it out.
Huh. It must be a bug in REPL.it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're recording this session, so I should send them a bug report.
The code is indeed still there though.
Okay.
That's really weird.
It's in an inconsistent state right now. So what I did last time was I refreshed the page, and then it was still missing the code. And on your end, where it says saved, file sync status, everything is saved. Is that also?
No, it says waiting.
Ah,
It doesn't say save.
that's significant.
Sorry,
Right.
guys.
That's okay. It's definitely not your fault. I guarantee you it's not your fault. All right, let's try this to work around this bug. Okay, highlight and copy everything, then refresh your page and paste everything. Because I'm assuming that when you refresh your page, it's gonna show you the same thing as showing me. Let me know if that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. All right. Now select everything and paste. Yes, we're back.
Okay.
Okay. So now we've got to work around for that bug.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't need this return. Sorry, right?
You'll need the return, but you don't need. You can move the fetch inside of the then block.
This.
Yeah, you can get rid of that. And
Nope.
well, and then you just have an extra curly bracket and parenthesis at the bottom.
This one.
Not at the very bottom, but under fetch, under the first fetch. Yeah.
This right here.
Yeah, just delete those guys. That should work. Okay, good. So now it's complaining that position is not defined.
Mm-hmm.
So we want it to accept the latitude and longitude as parameters.
So,
Parameters to the fetch weather function.
this part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But we haven't. How does it?
Well, that's gonna come next.
Import something? We have to import it.
No, you don't have to import anything. We're gonna change the code that calls fetch weather so that we pass in latitude and longitude.
Okay.
Okay, and then you're gonna want to change on line 4 position.chords.latitude to just latitude, and position.chords longitude to just longitude, because now we're passing those in as parameters. Then line 4 says that there is unreachable code. That's because, and this is something else which is important. You see how on line 2, there's the return statement and then a line break or a new line?
Oh, it doesn't like it.
Yeah, it doesn't like that. It thinks, again, for historic JavaScript related reasons, return, enter, and then more code, it just thinks that you're returning undefined. Yeah, which is confusing, but that's important to know about. That's sort of a gotcha for JavaScript. Okay, great. So this looks good. So now take that code on lines 11 and 12 that you saved, and we're going to move that into our app.js. So you can cut and paste that, and we'll move into app.js. Okay, so given that we want to fetch the user's location once when the application first starts, where would you put the code that looks up the user's current location? Where in the component?
Like right here.
No, wouldn't you do it in the actual first part under like super props or like in that area? Because that's what is called initially.
Yeah, but basically you're going to put it in the constructor anywhere after super, and before fetch weather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, probably line 19 is a good spot for it. Nice. Okay, so it is complaining because of a syntax error. So it's missing, yeah, it's missing some. Oh, and you don't. Well, I mean, you could do a return, but you don't need to. It's not going to do anything for us here.
Oh.
But so you're missing some squiggly brackets, a squiggly bracket and a parenthesis after after that line. Yeah, line 20.
And another one?
Actually, it's after the call to get current position. Yeah, after the semicolon.
After this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What am I missing?
Yep.
This.
Yeah, exactly. And then you need a parenthesis. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Line 22.
Why do you need to put the promise in parentheses?
Because there. Oh.
No, it didn't like it when I
21.
Do we have?
One more. There. It needed one more parenthesis.
Oh.
The reason why you were putting the promise in parentheses is because we want to chain it. So what I mean is we could also do it this way. We could say const p is equal to new promise, and then do call p dot then, and and handle it. But because we're setting up a chain of promise handlers, it's just easier to do this.
Okay.
It saves us one line.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting the user's current position, and then we know what this API is going to look like. It says position, and then we're going to we basically want to pass the position that we're getting back into fetch weather. We also want to set the state for the latitude and longitude once we get the position. So does anybody know how to modify lines 24 through 28 so that we can do that? First, we want to call fetch weather with the position.
So like put position in that like.
Yeah.
So yeah. Right. So just.
Yep. But you've got to call it inside of the then handler.
I see.
Yeah.
So before this D, right?
So you've got this.
I'm confused. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you've got this promise here.
Right.
And then you've got this then handler. And then we're getting the position, which has been resolved by this promise. And then we only have the position inside of these, the scope determined by this block. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to move the call to fetch weather so that it's inside of that block.
So.
Because right now fetch weather is outside of the block.
So you want to move. Oh. So like, move this inside there.
Yeah, exactly. Although yeah, okay, yeah. Let's start with that.
I'm scared. Is it still there?
Yep.
I'm scared it's gonna get messed up.
There's one. You're missing one squiggly bracket and parenthesis from the end.
What do you mean?
On line 28.
This?
Yeah. Oh, actually, no. This is fine. This is fine. It didn't. It's technically. Yeah. It's correct. It's fine. Okay. Okay. Good. And then how do we pass the position into fetch weather? Do you remember what the API is?
Oh.
Position.chords.latitude and position.chords.longitude.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because we did that before, right?
Right.
Latitude, for instance.
Yeah.
And then, we have to put it in.
No, this is good.
Oh.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be in an object.
Comment.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Yeah, and there's one other thing that we wanted to do here, which was we wanted to update the state with the latitude and longitude from the user's position, so that it would be reflected inside of the form field. So how do we do that? Can you do it on line 22? Update the state
on 22.
Mm-hmm.
Like in.
Well, I mean, create a new line, but around line 22, okay. In that block.
I don't know exactly where to put it. Like inside this curly bracket.
It's a new statement, and you want to put it inside of around inside of the block that starts on line 21 and ends on line 27.
I see. Okay.
So would you update like periods to say like latitude, longitude, and then say like position dot chords dot latitude, position chords dot longitude?
So you're saying like so typing out this dot state dot latitude equals position dot chords dot latitude? Is that what you mean?
Well, you already have on line 23 this dot set state, which goes into an object. So can't you just update that object?
Yes, you could put it there on line 23. The reason why I don't want to put it there is because that is the on line 23. That's the result of fetch weather. So we basically have to wait for the result of two more API calls to return before we're updating the UI. So the user will basically see, when you first load the UI, we're setting latitude and longitude to 0. So the user is going to see that for longer. They're going to see 0, 0 for longer. And then suddenly the screen is going to update to show them their coordinates. And I think it would be better for them to see their latitude and longitude in the UI as soon as that data becomes available to them. So so that's why it would be better to do it on line 22 and not inside of line 23. It's so that the user can see it sooner, and they don't have to wait for the weather to load. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So I just don't know where. So before fetch weather.
Yeah, you can put it here.
Okay. I still don't know what to do exactly.
So you're updating the state to update the latitude and longitude properties from the position. So how do you update the state of a React component?
You set the state. You set state.
Yeah. So you're gonna call that.
So you do like. You do. Wait, where am I? There we go. Okay. This dot set state.
Mm-hmm.
Then you give it an object, another object. Right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And then you'd say latitude.
Mm-hmm.
And then you use we use oh boy.
So see how we're getting the latitude on line 26?
Yeah, would we use the value that we put in the input, like this dot state dot latitude?
No, we wouldn't, because we're updating the state.
Yeah. So will we just do like position again?
Yes.
Like this.
Yeah.
And then comma.
Yeah, very nice.
Cool.
Okay, so we should be able to see that reflected in the app. So let's refresh. Okay, so you see first it updated latitude and longitude, and then it fetched the weather, and then it displayed the weather.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, good. So
if you like wanted it to like say, I mean, this is kind of dumb because you want to be able to change it, but like if you wanted the latitude and longitude, like if you wanted that form to go away, you would just unmount it, right? Like after it updates, did you unmount it or like make it not visible somehow?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you would do is you would just prevent it from rendering. And what I mean by that is you could just, like if there was a variable in the state called like hide form or something like that, then you could just do like, you know, like, say this dot state dot hide form, and just, you know, return null here. Otherwise, have it render the form.
Like because if you unmounted it, then it wouldn't be able to use the information anymore, and it would crash, right? Or is that incorrect?
Well, it depends. It depends on it. What, maybe you could explain a little bit more what you mean.
I guess like, well, because if you unmount something, then it doesn't render. But
that's
like,
true.
If you were using the form that was like populating the location, and then that populated the data, then once if you unmounted the form, would it affect the render of the information?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is like if you were to unmount the form, after the user has updated this, so I think what you're saying is like if you plug some data
Right.
into the form,
And then at this point, that
and
goes
then you say set state, right? So you've updated the state from the form, and
Right.
then you remove the form.
right.
Does it crash the application? Like
Yeah.
what happens to the state?
Or would it still show the information that?
Yeah, it'll still show the information. Yeah, the form is just, rendering that information
Right.
and giving you a way to update that information. But if you remove the form, it doesn't remove the information or change the information. That's separate.
Yeah, that was my question. I just wasn't sure how that affects the whole.
Yeah, no, good question. And I'd even go so far as to say that like the separation of data from how it's rendered
Mhm.
is like one of the like fundamental concepts of React. Like it's very important. So yeah, it's important that those things be kept separate, and fortunately they are.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So there was one more small modification that I wanted to recommend making to this, which was we could take this dot then, which is inside of this other dot then,
Mhm.
and we can basically just return fetch weather, the results of fetch weather, and move the dot then out. And that's just a little bit nicer way to do it.
Mhm.
And I believe that'll still work. So the nice thing about that is we still get that nice error handling property, that nice chain of promise handlers. Okay, so that's working well. So then there was one last thing that we needed to do, which was
Oh, I also noticed like it saves the location, but if I were to like move, it would update it, correct? Like if I open the page in a different tab and it populates the data for me, and then like if I close it and then reopen it, it's exactly the way it was. Like it's cached there, but like if I moved, it would re-look for the location, or
only when you refresh the page. I mean, really, because it's only looking up the user's location.
right.
When you, essentially when it's instantiating that component,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's only happening once in our application, like it's not going to re-look up the user's location. Of course, we could tell it to do that. In fact, I think the geolocation API has a way to like track the user's location in kind of an efficient way. So you could use that, or you could just continually poll, to see if the location changes. But the way that we've written it, it's only gonna check once when the page loads.
Yeah, but so like even though I closed it and then reopened it,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't have to reload. It was like the same.
That's interesting.
That's what I meant. Like it took like not even like a millisecond. It just was like exactly the same.
I wonder why. Actually, that's a little bit surprising to me. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that. I wonder if your browser is doing something clever, like caching.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Are you using Safari or Chrome?
Chrome. I don't use Safari.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I think Safari does some stuff like that, but I wasn't expecting Chrome to do that.
It's okay. I was just curious. Like.
Yeah, I wonder why. Anyway, to finish our the functionality of our application, there's one more thing that we want to do, which is we want to finish this form handler so that when we submit the form, it takes the latitude and longitude that the user has specified and looks up a new forecast, and then gets that forecast data and re-renders the page. So how would we modify, like, how do we do that? In particular, are there parts of what we've written already that we can reuse when we're writing that logic, so we don't have to write it from scratch?
So we want what again? Sorry.
We want so that when we click on the when we submit the form, for it to take the latitude and longitude, which is specified in the form, and look up a new forecast, and then re-render that forecast.
Oh.
So so basically we've already written this logic, and now we want to break it out into probably a new method that we can call, and we'll call that method from two different locations, from two different places within our component, and we can reuse that logic.
So could we like reuse the handle latitude change? Right.
That was not the part that I was thinking. The part that I was thinking was basically the part that fetches the weather forecast and sets the state from that forecast. Do you see where that is in the component?
Yeah, I mean it's the part we kind of just did.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe this promise right here, right?
Yeah, pretty much everything except for it's pretty much everything on lines 21 through 32. So let's try to break that out into a new. Oh, actually, sorry, I take that back. That's incorrect. It's pretty much everything on lines 27 through 31.
This return.
Yeah.
Do I have enough time?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, my computer.
Did your computer crash?
No, it's going to soon. I can't. Hold on. Let somebody else try for a second. I gotta get my charger.
Okay.
Okay. We need to like. Do this where? Oh, so Jake,
Yes.
would we put it, like, oh, we can't do that. Never mind. I can't figure out like where to put it. That's
Right. So you're going to create a new method.
like this form handler.
Yeah, exactly. You can call it like fetch weather and update, something like that.
Oh wow, can't type.
Yeah. And you're probably going to want to pass it the latitude and longitude again, like 2 parameters. Yep. And that's where you can put that code.
Oh, what am I missing? I'm missing.
Um,
Oh, I don't need. There's something I don't need. I don't need this, right?
you actually do want that, because that's the thing that's going to update the state.
Let's do that.
But you're going to need a closing curly bracket. Oh, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, it didn't.
And you're going to need a closing curly bracket and parenthesis.
Oh. Oh, I see.
No.
No.
Well, yes, but you're going to want to move that up before from line 54 to line 53. Yeah. And then add a curly bracket after that on line 54.
I'm not doing well with it.
Yeah, curly bracket. Yeah, that should work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if it's possible. Hang on, I'm just going to try something here. If I click on Format Code, Auto Format. No, that's not doing anything. Anyway, it's good to keep track of the indentation.
Yeah.
You know,
When
and
you
you can
use it, like messes it all up.
and you can see that when my cursor's on a particular bracket, it will try to match it to the associated bracket, and you can use that in order to make sure that your brackets are matching. So
So then we just need. Well, we don't have position.
right, but you're passing in the latitude and the longitude, so you can just yeah,
Do latitude and longitude again.
exactly.
Other one.
Good. All right. Now you're going to want to call this method from your constructor. So basically on line 27.
Oh, sorry.
Because we've moved that code out.
Oh wait. So wait. So I'm taking that out.
Yeah, that's right. Because because we don't need it there anymore, because now it's a duplicate code.
Oh.
So we're consolidating the logic into one spot so that we can call it from the constructor, and then later on from the form handler.
I'm gonna have too many of these.
No, that's good. Yeah, you're going to want a return statement there as well.
So I'm gonna return fetch weather update.
Yep. But you got to call this dot.
Oh.
Because it's a method.
Wait. Oh, that would be nice if I capitalized that.
And then you're gonna want to pass it the position.coords.latitude and position.coords.longitude. Yeah. Okay, good. So let's just verify that the page hasn't is still working. Yep, page looks good. And now there's one last thing to do, which is in the form handler, you're going to want to call this.fetchWeatherUpdate with the latitude and the longitude from the state. So you're gonna add a new line after line 40, and it's going to be like the exact same call from the constructor, except instead of passing in the position that you got from the browser's geocoding or the browser's location API, instead you're now passing in the state. Yeah.
And this dot state dot latitude.
Yeah.
And then this dot state.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay, let's test it out. So let's see, latitude, longitude,
See, it
France.
loaded this time.
Sorry?
It reloaded this time like it was like it should.
That
was weird. Whatever.
So let's try to give it the latitude and longitude for Paris, France. Okay, submit. Oh yeah, it didn't work because NOAA only works for the United States. Yeah, because they're a U.S. agency, so they don't have weather stations internationally. So let's try Paris, Texas. But yeah, that's actually a good point, is we need more tests for failure because we don't want the page to crash if it gets a weird response back. So that's actually a good note. Try it now. Oh, okay, this is interesting. So we're giving it malformed data. Somehow the longitude is okay. Well, now we have to debug this thing because somehow the longitude is you can see here that in the API call, the second argument is just an object. So instead of giving it some kind of a number or something like that.
Object. That's so dumb. I hate that.
So we gotta see what that is. Okay. So let's see here. e.target.value. Okay, well that looks pretty sensible. Negative. Also sensible. So the problem is probably not in the change handlers. It's probably somewhere else.
Hey Jake.
Yeah.
Why didn't we have to like parse the JSON at all?
Where?
Like in just the fetch weather.
That is, yeah. So you're talking about why didn't we call JSON.parse?
Yeah, why didn't we have to like?
Yeah, it's
stringify it. Sorry.
Well, the reason why we aren't parsing the JSON is because Fetch does that for you. So when you're calling So actually, we'll go into weather component. We'll set a breakpoint. Sorry, not weather component. Fetch weather. So we'll set some breakpoints and see what's happening. So so basically, when we call response.json, the fetch API is parsing the JSON for us, and it does that when we call this response.json method. Let's go in here and see what's happening with this longitude. Okay, so it looks like for longitude, we're passing it the whole state. Longitude. So you see, I'm stepping back up. I'm using the debugger, and I'm stepping back up through the call stack, so I can, and I'm looking at each argument that we're passing it. Oh, and you can see the bug is right there. We're passing it this.state instead of this.state.latitude.
Where?
Sorry. Oh, right on line 41. See, right. Oh. That's super weird because it looks like on my screen.
It's there on mine.
Yeah, it's there on mine too. All right, well that looks like another that looks like another REPL.IT bug. It's not a perfect technology, but I'd say it's pretty good. All right, so we'll try this one more time. Okay, now it's working well. Now it's good. All right, so I'm going to try one more time, and my Mac is about to go to sleep, so hopefully it works. Otherwise, everybody's session might end, so better move quick. Okay, I'm going to submit. And I think it updated. Right? I didn't notice, actually. We got to add a loading spinner. Maybe we can do that next. Here, I'm going to refresh the page one more time. Yeah, okay.
Cool.
So you can see 67 degrees Fahrenheit tonight in New York, but in Paris, Texas, it is 64. Okay, so that's working. All right, so so good. We've completed our enhancement. Let's take a like a 10-minute break, and then when we get back, we can work on testing our UI.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions before we break?
Yeah, well, either now or when we get back, can you like do a rundown of what you just did? I kind of got lost in the sauce there.
Yeah. Let's yeah. Well, let's do a quick recap right now. So basically, what we did. Well, okay. So the goal was we basically set new requirements for our user interface, so that the user would be able to specify the latitude and longitude that they wanted to use to look up the forecast. Mm-hmm. So we created a form with 2 form inputs, one for latitude, one for longitude, and a submit button. And then we made it so that the values of the form would be set initially from the user's current location, which we were using to look up the forecast initially. And then we made it so that the user could, we basically implemented the behavior that we wanted, which was when the user entered the latitude and longitude and clicked submit, it would look up a new forecast for that latitude and longitude and refresh the and update the UI with the new forecast. So those were the functional goals. of what we were doing. And the way that we did that was by changing some of our code. So for example, we changed fetch weather. We refactored the fetch weather function so that instead of looking up the user's current location every time it was called, it would instead receive the latitude and longitude as parameters. And then we refactored some more of the code so that for example, we would be able to reuse the logic where we were fetching the weather forecast and updating the UI. And then finally, we added all of the logic around building an interactive form in React. So adding all of the event handlers for the form and things like that. But yeah, my laptop's gonna die, so I'm gonna go grab the charger. Let's break for 10 minutes, reconvene at about 7:30, and then we'll do some testing. Okay, talk to you soon. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Do we have a quorum? Everybody here?
I'm here.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions in the interim since we last spoke? Okay, just feel free to interrupt me at any time if you start to have questions about any of this content. So yeah, we're going to do some testing. I'm going to attempt to. We're going to attempt to do two different kinds of testing. The first one is going to be snapshot testing, which we did yesterday, but this time we're going to attempt to simulate the user, and we're also going to have to change our tests. So we're going to try to simulate the user behavior. So what I mean by that is, rather than me sitting at the keyboard typing in these values, instead we're going to write a program which basically fills in these values for us, and then clicks on the submit button for us, and then we want to measure the take a snapshot of the user interface to make sure that it changes in the ways that we expect. So yeah, so we're going to work on that. And then we are going to work on an end-to-end test, which doesn't use mocks. And we're going to use Selenium for that. And we're going to do both those things because they're sort of useful in different ways. Yeah. Does anybody have a preference for where we start? I'm kind of thinking that we might want to start with Selenium because we looked at snapshot tests yesterday. And we looked at Selenium on Monday. And I kind of like Selenium for your projects, for people's projects, because you can start to develop tests in Selenium right now. Because I don't think most people in the class are using React currently very much, even though you probably will. So Selenium is something that you could use right now to test your application, even if it's just a simple web page. Without much JavaScript, you can use Selenium to test it. So let's start with Selenium, and then we'll finish with React. We'll finish with the React snapshot testing. All right. So unfortunately, we can't do this. We can't use REPL.it to do this. So I'm just going to have to share my screen. But if you like, you can follow along and follow what I'm doing. So first, I'm going to install the Selenium IDE into my web browser. I go to seleniumhq.org, click on Selenium IDE. I'm going to drop this into the Slack right now. I'm going to go to Chrome Download. Click Add to Chrome. Add extension. Okay, it says it's been added to Brave using the Brave browser, which is based on Chrome. And then it gives you a little icon right up here. So the idea behind Selenium is that it's going to record my actions in the browser and then play them back, and then we can tell it to go and check certain things in the user interface to make sure that it's behaving correctly. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to say record a new test in a new project. I'm going to say project name is weather, and I'm going to give it a URL to load, which is going to be this one, the URL of my site. I'm going to click on start recording. Then it's going to open the site in a new window. And you can see at the bottom of the page, it says Selenium IDE is recording. So it's remembering my interactions. So I'm going to go and I'm going to update. Well, let's just start with this, just loading the page. And make sure that it's able to do that. Okay. So I just want to load the page, make sure it's able to load the weather, and then check to make sure that it's loaded some values in the weather. So when I'm done recording, I click on, I switch back over here and I click on stop recording. I'm going to call this test load test. And I can see that there are a series of commands that it's run. So I'm just going to clear out all of them. We really just want to initially load the page and make sure that it was able to fetch the weather. So I'm going to just delete what's here. And I'm going to add a new command. Which is going to check it's just going to assert that there is some text. And I'm going to find a target in the page. It's going to be this one. And I want to make sure that the value is tonight. Because I think that the forecast is always going to have something that says tonight. Although depending on the time of day that you get the forecast, that might not be true. But that's an assumption. Right now I'm assuming that you're always going to have a forecast. In the forecast, you're always going to have a period. The first period is going to be tonight. So basically, this test is just to make sure that, you know, the web page was able to load and fetch some data, and that worked. So I'm going to run the tests, and I'm a little concerned that this isn't going to work because it might not wait long enough. So I'm going to save the test. So I'm a little concerned that this isn't going to work, but let's just verify. Okay, I'm going to run the test by clicking on the little run button. It's preparing to run the test. Okay, well actually that worked really well. And you can see what it did. It opened the web page, set the window size, and then it went into the web page and it tried to find, it looked up the element at using this CSS selector. So it looked up the element that I specified, and then it checked to make sure that the value said tonight. So you see that was like a super quick and easy way to write a simple test for this web application. So we can do some more complex things as well. Like, for example, recording the user interaction. I also just want to point out that, that this is an example of an end-to-end test, because it's actually testing the application, like a live deployed application, against live data. Like, it's pulling in data from the API. It's making sure that the whole application is working from the front end all the way to the back end and back. So yeah, so we can do another test where we actually edit the form. So let's add a new test. Call this one lookup, or we'll call this one change location. And we click record. It's going to reload the web page. You can see at the bottom it says Selenium IDE is recording. Okay, same thing as before. Now we're going to give it a new latitude and longitude coordinate. So I'll just look up Paris, Texas again. I'll just give it Paris, Texas. Click submit. Then click stop recording. So I can do the same thing here and check that the value is tonight. So let's run this test. Ah, looks like it didn't like that one. Let's see if we can figure out why. Well, it's possible that it's a timing issue. So this was one of the things that I was a little concerned about before, was if you're dealing with asynchronous interactions, then it might be a little, I think there are ways to tell Selenium to wait, but I'm not sure if it's possible to do it through the IDE. Oh, right, wait. So they have all of these guys, like wait for, and then a number of different options, like things that you can wait for. Wait for an element to become editable or not editable, or present, not present, or not visible, or present or visible. So we could change this so that it waits for that element to become present and visible. And then I think you can set a timeout so that if it takes too long then the test will fail. So let's try to do that. So I'm going to click record again, click here, and then change this click to wait for element present. And then it takes a value. I believe this is in milliseconds. So it'll wait for up to 30 seconds for that element to become present. So let's stop recording and let's try to run the test again. Okay, so it liked that one. So in order to avoid timing issues when you're dealing with asynchronous behavior, you should use this wait command. So I'm going to save this. So that's a quick tutorial on Selenium. You can use Selenium with continuous integration. There are some websites which specifically support Selenium. In particular, there's this one called Sauce Labs. And you can get your continuous integration to integrate your continuous integration server, like Travis CI, which we talked about on Monday. You can integrate it with something like Sauce Labs, where it will run tests in Selenium for you. And again, the advantage of this approach is that you're using real web browsers, and it's like, so that's good because it's closer, relatively closer to what your users are going to be using and seeing. So you could test it in Internet Explorer, for example, or Safari, or whatever browsers, desktop browsers your users are likely to be using. And the other advantage is that it allows you to do full end-to-end tests of your deployed applications. So it's a handy tool. And then with the IDE, it makes it very, very easy to quickly create simple tests. So, and it's not specifically related to any, it's not specifically related to React or any specific web technology. It'll work with anything that you're using to build your application. So does anybody have any questions about that? Testing with Selenium? Okay, so so let's move on then to testing with React and Jest. So we're going to build on top of the test script that we created from last class. Okay, so now that this code has diverged a little bit from what's in my Git module, I'm just going to have to synchronize this with what's on my system. Unfortunately, I have to run this on my computer because I don't believe REPL.it gives us a command line environment, which is what I would need in order to run these tests. So I have to do it on my computer. So let me just synchronize what I've got with what we've created today. Sorry, this is not very exciting to watch me edit this stuff, but just take 1 minute. Oh, just a moment. I'm not sure if it's fetching the weather. I just updated the fetch weather function, so just verify that that's working correctly. Does not look like it. Yeah, that's interesting. Doesn't look like fetch weather is even being called. Ah, that's why. I was calling the wrong method. Oh, and we weren't rendering the error. That's why. It's failing silently. Ah, there we go. It's much better. Loading forecast. we getting back? Seems good. Oh, right. So if you remember yesterday, I showed you how to use React prop types, and I wasn't doing that in my local code, and this is why it's important to do that in local code. It's because in the weather component that I had in my um, local repository, the name of the property for the weather forecast that I was using was forecast, but in the one that we coded together, I made it periods. So so it was that's why it wasn't it was just stuck on loading forecast. It thought it didn't have the data. Prop types would have caught that. So prop types are good. Use prop types. Okay. All right. So okay. So it's working on my local. Good. So the next thing that we were going to do was we were going to test this. So we already have some snapshot tests for these components. Um, Now, because we've changed the components, we've added this form here. Do you think the tests are going to succeed or are they going to fail? So we have two components here, right? We have one for the one that renders this weather forecast, and then we have one for the whole application, right? Two different components. Um, do we expect that the one for the weather forecast is going to succeed or fail? Anybody want to venture a guess? Well, I mean, if we think about it, we haven't actually changed anything inside of the weather component. Like it renders exactly the same. All the changes we made were to its parent, basically the app component, because we added the form. But everything else is the same for the weather component. So probably the app component is going to fail and the weather component is going to succeed when we're checking the snapshots. So let's run the tests and see if validate our assumptions. So I expect it's going to say it's run 2 test suites. Um, Looks like they all passed. Why did they pass? Oh, oh, that's interesting. Ah, one moment, I'll have an explanation for you. Hmm. Well, interestingly, um, okay, so here is why they succeeded. Let's open the test. So we're testing two components, right? We have these two tests. In the first one, we test the weather component, the one that renders the forecast, and then we test the app, which in my local repository is called weather container. Um, so, um, so this is succeeding because the, well, the, again, the weather component didn't change. So we were expecting that one to succeed. But I was expecting the weather container to fail because we've changed it. And if we go into the snapshots, let's take a look at it. Oh, um, it looks like it's actually updated the snapshots. I think, okay, I think I made a mistake. I think I actually got rid of the snapshots yesterday for the weather container. Here, let me actually restore it to what it was. I think when I was demoing it yesterday, I deleted the snapshots, and that's why it was passing. Okay, so I've restored it to what it was. Now I'm going to run the tests, and I expect one of them to succeed, the one for the weather component to succeed, and the one for the weather container to fail. So I'm going to try that now. Right, okay, so that matches our expectations. Two snapshots failed. Um, so, good. So that matches our expectations around which tests are going to succeed and which ones are going to fail. There's also something else happening, which is a little bit gnarly. So if I scroll up here, past the failing snapshot diff, you can see that we're getting this console.error where it says cannot read property get current position of undefined. That is happening because we put this, remember previously we were calling the navigator.geolocation.getCurrentPosition inside of the fetch weather module. So this is the call that gets the browser's current position. And we were doing that inside of the fetch weather module. And remember, the fetch weather module was the one that was getting mocked. Because in a way, this geolocation.getCurrentPosition module function call, this is another kind of third-party external call. And it's not available inside of the like the React test rendering environment. It's only available inside of the browser. So because we moved this function call into our app's constructor, we moved it out of the fetched weather module, which we were mocking, and into the app components constructor. Now this is getting called inside of when we're running our tests, and it's throwing an error. So, there are two things that we could do about this. We could move this function call into the fetch weather module, which is being mocked, or we could mock this function call in a different way. And we'll go ahead and mock this function call in a different way so that we don't get this error message. You can see that the error is being caused by basically navigator.geolocation is undefined, and that is causing the error to propagate through our promise chain into this catch, where it's hitting this console.error statement. So that's what's happening. So let's solve this problem using mocks, more mocks. So we can just do it like this. The easiest way to do it is right up here at the top of our test module, we can just do navigator.geolocation is equal to get current position. And we can define this as a function which returns some dummy data. So the function signature for get current location is it takes success, callbacks for success and failure. So we'll just do process.nextTick to make it asynchronous, and call resolve and give it position dot chords dot latitude and longitude. And we'll just use these for New York City. And this is fine as long as we're testing for the success case of that function. If we want to test what happens when geolocation fails, then we'll need to do a little something else. But this is a good start. So that should eliminate the error that we're seeing here. Okay, so I'm going to restart the tests. One moment. It says cannot read property latitude if undefined. Errors in code, weather, line 53. Source weather documents. Just a moment. Oh, one property too many. It doesn't actually want a position property. The whole object is assigned to the variable called position. Okay, that should work. So now we will probably not see an error. What about this? Read property, get current position of undefined. No. I might need to it's working now. Yeah, I might need to move it in here. Or I might need to use just.mock. Yeah, I kind of thought that this would work. I need to do global.navigator, probably global.navigator. Does everybody get that I'm mocking the geolocation API so that we can run our tests in this environment inside of the um,
Kind of.
okay. Hmm. Oh, it's failing in app.test.js. Okay, that makes sense. Right. Right. Okay. But then in weather.test.js, it's still failing. 58 isn't like this. Fetch weather update. Oh yeah, of course. Okay. So we also changed um, the name of the module that we were mocking. So in our, sorry, the name of the function that we were mocking inside of our, inside of this guy. We changed it from fetch weather for current location to fetch weather. And that's why that guy is failing. And then, yeah, we just need to change app.test.js. Just like that. Okay, we can try it now. Hopefully it won't have any more errors. Just a moment. I think it doesn't like this process.nextTick. Okay, I think that's working now. Right, so I believe it has updated our snapshots for us. Yes, it's updated the snapshots to incorporate um, the new form element, which you can see at the top up here. And right, so we were going to next simulate user interaction with that form. Um, so let's see, I guess we have about 13 minutes left. Um, so yeah, um, uh, right. Just a moment. Let me pull up the documentation for that. Um, Alice, do you remember when testing with Jest, in order to pull out particular like subcomponents, is the best way to do that with refs, or like I think I remember the best way to do that is like to assign a ref to um, a subcomponent, and then you can reference it from the outside component. But I wanted to confirm that before showing it to people. Um,
That certainly sounds reasonable.
yeah, I think that's the right way to do it. But I just wanted to verify that before I showed it. Um, yeah, I think let's move forward with that assumption. Um, yeah, okay, I'm gonna give it a try. Okay, so so I think what we have to do if we wanted to simulate clicks and things like that is we basically go into let's see, our weather component here, and the element that we want to reference. Um, and we use this kind of syntax: ref equals this dot um, submit element equals x, like that. Um, hopefully it's okay with this. And then I believe we should be able to reference it from uh, our testing code. Um, so here we can one sec, I'm just going to eliminate this app test. Better. Right. So I believe we can do then component dot submit element, I think, should be available as a property. It's either that or component dot refs dot submit element. No, that says undefined. Let's see, refs dot submit element. that's not it. Refs, this. Oh, there's a new kind of syntax for this. Yeah. Then how do we get it from the outside? Focus text, create ref. Let's try it like this. Still undefined. I wonder if I'm setting it up correctly. Try it on the page. Hmm. Hmm. Let's try this. Hmm. Well, we've got about 4 minutes until the end of class. I'm going to prepare the last part of this lab, the uh, user simulation part, so that it's available for tomorrow. We can do that at the beginning of class tomorrow. Does anybody have any questions on anything else that we've seen so far? Okay, if not, let's plan to reconvene tomorrow. So yeah, so homework for this week was just to think about these different testing techniques that we've seen, and you know, think about how you can apply it to your capstone projects, and be prepared to talk about that in class tomorrow. And then hopefully we'll be able to, you know, build some of those tests together in class. Like it'll be an all-day lab. So, and if you want to get a jump start on it, you know, feel free. But otherwise, we'll build that stuff out together in class. But yeah, basically just think about it. Think about an approach, plan an approach, and just be ready to talk about that. And we can go around in a circle and just discuss, you know, testing strategies that you think might work. Yeah, feel free to reach me on Slack if you have any other questions.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.